All right, all right. We are live, but we're going to let it breathe just for a moment. And then guess what we're going to do? We're going to dive into it. And we are almost, come on now. Good. Welcome in, everybody. It's the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me is my fellow football priest, who you know, who you love, Zack Kelberman. Zack, it's been a couple of days, and, you know, somehow, some way, like, it's been this slow of an off season that I kind of forgot normal stuff. Monday, I'm thinking, Thursday will be our last pre-camp show. Training camp started on basically yesterday, dude. Training camp's rolling. They're just not letting the fans in and the media to really get too close till Friday. But what have been some of your we'll get to Courtland, we'll get to Javonte, we'll get to Audric Estimé. What have been some of your initial takeaways through this week so far?
Number one, I'm so happy football's back and training camp is here, Chad. Waiting through that 6-week break and the aggregation and all that, you and I talk offline about it. But second of all, from a macro point of view, watching Surtain Payton behind the microphone, he's so much more freer this year. He's so much more looser with the media, but still feisty in his own way. He pushed back when someone said Lucas Kroll was the most impressive player of the offseason in his own Sean Payton way, but you can tell he's just more settled this season, which is good for the overall, picture of the team. The quarterback competition is interesting, but it's the acclimation ramp-up period. I don't want to overreact or underreact to anything just quite yet.
Okay. After, at long last, finally, Courtland Sutton, you had the article for us, Zack, which I read. Great job. Thank you. But break it down. They didn't really go to great length to ameliorate. I mean, what we had heard, I want to say it was ESPN's Jeremy Fowler about halfway through the NFL summer, something like that. Yeah, he's looking for, he's on the books for about $13 million this year. He'd like to be in the 15 to 16 range. Cut to today, news breaks. They came to some kind of an agreement. What happened?
So basically, they sweetened the pot for Courtland Sutton merely for the 2024 season, Chad. This does not affect 2025, the final year of his contract, with no guaranteed money in that base salary. But basically, they gave him $1.5 million in new incentives that I believe are yet to be announced or detailed. He can make up to $15.2 million for this upcoming year. But I think Mike Kliss put it best when he provided the context for the restructure, Chad. And he said, quote, all along the offseason, Broncos had offered Courtland Sutton $1 million extra in incentives, but no change to his base contract. Broncos sweetened incentive package an extra $1.5 million, going from $200,000 to $1.7 million, and a deal was struck. So no more contract talk for the Broncos wide receiver. Basically, we don't get everything right on this podcast. We did get this right with Courtland Sutton. We predicted that the Broncos would show some good faith and throw him some extra money after paying Quinn Miners, but it basically just incentivizes him to stick around and be the Broncos wide receiver one for 2024, hopefully have a good year, and then go into 25 as a lame duck with no guaranteed money.
Yeah, I'm just glad they got it handled so that it's just not a storyline anymore. Like, you took care of business. And Sean Payton on the subject, he, pardon me, tried to make it sound like he didn't know much about it. He's just glad he's there now,
Yeah.
But he did say this, quote, I'm not even sure what, quote, I'm not even quite sure what the specifics are. It's good to have him back out here. He provides leadership as well as skill set that we like, just as we talked about earlier with a different group. We're trying to put the pieces together. It's a big group size-wise, the Broncos receiving core. And then he tells this little anecdote of his first time coaching in the NFL in 97 and being just impressed by the size of the 49ers wide receiver room, et cetera, et cetera. But then he goes on to say that, I didn't spend a lot of time talking to Courtland about his contract. I would just have talks relative to what his summer plans were. That was really his agent and George Payton visiting. I don't think there were a lot of discussions. I don't think there were a lot of changes to the way it was structured. So he knows something, obviously, Zack, but he closes with, it's good to have him here.
Yeah, I don't know that I believe Sean 100% there by saying he doesn't really know the exact details of the deal. He knows. I mean, he's the de facto GM, and he
Guaranteed.
probably was spearheading those negotiations. But like you said, it's good to have Courtland Sutton in the fold officially for 2024. Put those release talks and trade talks to bed and go be the best receiver he could be.
We got the Papa Bear in the house early with a super chat, as is his way. Thank you,
baby.
big dog. Saying good evening, Broncos country, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. God bless the USA. Buckham ×3, Broncos for life, MHH for life. Thank you, brother. So good to see you. I'm not sure we've confirmed this yet, David, and if we have, forgive me, but are we going to see you at the meet and greet? I mean, gosh, training camp's underway. We're under 2 months till the big day. So September 15th, let us know. Hopefully we do get to see you. It was great meeting you last year. Sam Bam, one of these days, I know you'll make it. Jumping in, though, with a very generous super. Thank you, brother. Says, evening, Chad, Zach, Scott, and Broncos country. I'm glad they got things squared away with Court before preseason begins. Go Broncos. 1 week till the Hall of Fame game and 6 weeks until the regular season opener. See, it's one of those things, man, where it's like, who was it that said it? Was it Twain? You know, when it comes to going broke, Zach, it goes slowly and then suddenly. It's kind of like that with the news cycle. Like It's going slow and then all of a sudden, kaboom, you're off to the races.
Exactly. And it feels like we never get to training camp. Then we get there, and it feels like we'll never get to the regular season. We get there, and then it's like the season's over. We're like, it went so fast. Where to go? And we love it. We enjoy it. And we're happy that it's finally here. And you're right about Courtland. I definitely echo that. So,
pardon me, Scott, I want to grab Woofy and I want to grab Ronk. And then we got a couple things, matters of business. Woofy, dude, it's great to see you, big dog. Thank you for the super chat. Hope you've had a great summer. He says, $5. Wish I had more. I enjoy all the podcasts. MHH, Broncos for life, Bo knows. Thank you, Woofy. Hey, it's much appreciated. Seriously, I hope you understand, a lot of podcasts nowadays in our territory kind of copy our model that we established many years back. And on this podcast and on this channel, every super chat to us, it could be 99 cents. It could be $5. It could be $500. Some people are that generous, but it could be 99 cents to us. We take it as an immense privilege and honor. So a $5 super chat to us, Woofy, bro, means the world. You worked hard. You did your thing. You grinded. You're helping us in our grind. Keep the lights on. We take that very seriously. So thank you, bud.
Yeah, we know times are tough and every penny counts. And Woofy, if you have any sort of comment or question, concern, consideration, please fire it away and we'll be sure to address it.
The Ronk, always great to see Michael Ronquillo in the house, rocking his Bo Nix blue. What do they call it? Midnight blue, I think, of the new design. So good to see you, Mike. Thank you, bro. Saying good evening, Chad and Zach on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Go Broncos. Yes, indeed. Lots more, guys. So much stuff to get into tonight. But first, a couple of matters of business. First being, though, make sure you like this video. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitter, it's a small thing you can do that goes a little bit above and beyond just watching it. We appreciate you watching and being with us, but just one little additional action actually goes a long way. But we also got to talk to you about saving some coin with your wireless program, because with the big wireless providers, we all know this, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price that you thought you were paying, it magically kind of mushrooms out, right? With Mint Mobile, though, you'll never have to worry about the gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan and those jaw-dropping monthly bills and unexpected overages.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/huddle. That's mintmobile.com/huddle. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/huddle. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
There you have it. Good stuff. Thank you, Mint Mobile. Okay, Zach. this was something that early in the offseason and well, actually, hold on. Let me put a pin in this. Let me grab Troy. We don't want to keep Troy waiting. I just saw that he's chilling. Troy Boer in the house, the
Thank you,
Fond
Troy.
Donkey on X on Twitter. Thank you, brother. He says, thanks, guys. Can't watch, but thank you for the discussions. I'll listen later. Court and Pook will take over. And that's a great segue because that's what I was trying to get to was Pookie, because Zach, early in the offseason, like immediate aftermath of the draft, you see the Broncos bring in Audric Estimé, which, by the way, we heard some interesting inside baseball breakdowns of the Broncos' evaluations of Estimé and why they were so stoked to get him where they did. I'll talk about that in a minute. But Javonte Williams, the implications weren't good, Zach, because he's coming off a lackluster first year back from that multi-ligament knee injury. It's just kind of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Well, it turns out perhaps, Zach, one of the contributing mitigating factors to his kind of slowdown, it wasn't just recovering from the knee, which is a mental thing. It's a physical thing. It's all encompassing, but he also put on a lot of weight relative to his rookie year. He has now dropped 11 pounds. He's down to 221. He said today. How do you think that impacts his contract year?
Well, I love the impetus for the weight loss. Basically, and I'll paraphrase, Sean Payton went through the film and watched Javonte's college cut-ups and said to Javonte, I want you to be at or near your college weight. And Javonte said, whatever you need, coach, I'll go do it. And he said he cut out snacking past a certain time and changed his diet. And he looks good. He looks spry on the field. And it looks like pre-injury form Javonte, which is what we all want, especially Javonte in a contract year, Chad. People forget it wasn't just like an ACL. I mean, I know I'm not downplaying it. It was multiple ligaments. It was career threatening. It was pretty bad. And he pushed to get back in a year. Obviously didn't look like himself. He missed the hole, had vision problems, but out there on the field, I know it's the acclimation period from the videos that we've seen in the pictures and releases from Broncos camp. He has more wiggle. He has more burst. He looks more rejuvenated. And I think the weight loss has helped him out.
I think it's just more evidence on the, breadcrumbs, so to speak, Zach, on the trail of explosive contract year because, you go back to what we know about Javonte Williams. It's easy to kind of discount him because you missed him entirely in 22 and he just wasn't the same in 23. But when you go back to 21 and his rookie year as a number 2, he rushed for over 900 yards. Yeah. He brought that physical, that pop, making all the highlight reels, definitely gave himself a reputation around the NFL. We saw that when he did open the next season in Seattle. Like those veterans, man, on the Seattle defense, they were trying to get some with Javonte, so to speak, But I digress. The point being here that version of Javonte, that rookie year form that got everybody so stoked and excited about the future, he was 11 pounds lighter than the guy we saw last year.
Right.
That's significant, guys. Like when you talk about, Clinton Portis, he was like 220 to 225, depending on where he was at in his career. As a Bronco, as a young guy, 221, 222, massive seasons. 11 pounds as a runner is a lot. And I think that does, Zach, go to explain quite a lot. The more of a complete picture, anyway, of his slowdown last year.
And it's obviously good for the Broncos backfield, but another thing that we kind of try to tamp down on this podcast, Chad, was the Javonte is going to be cut rumors. Javonte is going to be traded. They're going to move on just because they drafted Estimé and they have Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin. And I at least said, it's Samaje Perine that's the one on the bubble, and nothing through the first 2 days of camp has done anything to change that, Chad. Javonte is established as the RB1, and if anyone's out, it's going to be Perine.
Phil, what's up, big dog? Down in Tucson, we love you. Saying good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. Great to have football back and fresh news coming out. Hashtag Buckham MHH for life, Broncos for life. Thank you, brother. It's good to have you with us tonight. We also got Taylor Christensen in the house with the super chat, one of our regular superstars. Thank you, buddy. He says, hey, guys, I'm glad Sutton got paid. Glad they got it done. Well deserved. Also, I like what Sean said about Javonte looking good and trimmed. Yes, and as the room continues to grow with the concurrent viewers and whatnot, we do have, in case you missed it, here's what Sean Payton had to say about the Courtland Sutton thing today.
It's good to have him back out here. he provides leadership as well as a skill set that we like, and just as we talked about the running back room, that position group is going to be interesting as you guys look at it, and try to put together and piece together. It's a big group, size-wise, and first year I ever coached in the NFL in 1997, I believe, in Philadelphia. We played the 49ers. I want to say it's 97. Could have been 98. But it was at the old Veterans Stadium, and I remember when the Niners receivers walked out, and it was Jerry Rice, and it was John Taylor, and it was Stokes, and I couldn't get over how they looked. And there is a prototype. That doesn't mean that they can't be smaller, then they have a different skill set. But in this league, that's what we're looking for.
So he's got that prototype, and that's obviously, Zach, when he talks about the impression those Niners receivers made on him, you can see how that impression came out in the wash through the lens of history, right? Like he gets to New Orleans where he's involved in personnel and he can kind of pick and choose. You got Marcus Colston, who is like a quintessential X guy, right? Later, the slant god himself in Michael Thomas. So I think as much as Sean Payton, Zach, was stoked in Courtland Sutton being able to make some huge plays in the clutch last year and scoring 10 touchdowns, he was very dissatisfied that he couldn't get that dude the ball more. I really think so. It was such a low-volume passing attack and so inconsistent with Russ that I think he's really excited to have Courtland Sutton back. And again, he talked about the quarterbacks today, regardless of which one it is, how their relative competency, it gives a calming presence. So the arrow's ticking up for Courtland Sutton this year.
It was difficult when your quarterback is locking on to his first read constantly, and that first read is Courtland Sutton. So he was impacted by the quarterback play, no doubt, and hopefully Bo Nix helps Courtland in that regard. He mentioned, this is kind of off topic from what you were talking about, but when he was talking about Sutton, he mentioned the leadership factor, the locker room aspect, about him and Tim Patrick as well. And what's interesting is that Courtland Sutton might be on his last year in Denver. Tim Patrick probably is on his last year in Denver, but before they leave, they can bestow their knowledge to the next generation of Broncos wide receivers, of which there are several, Chad. Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Devon Vele. So having those two around in this receiver group, the mix of experience and youth is going to benefit everyone, including Sean Payton as a play caller.
We got also George Fox jumping in. Good to see you on Facebook, my friend. He says, guys, we're now in football season as it starts tomorrow, so we can now all start all the highlights and interviews. Go Broncos, MHH for life, Broncos. Yes, sir. I mean, it's happening now. It's just that the access really opens up tomorrow. It's been very limited even for media these first few days. They've been practicing, though. Training camp's underway. We learned also, Zach, today that the pads won't go on until Monday, but Monday's not that far away. So you'll have the big, welcome back football thing the Broncos are hosting for the fans tomorrow. And remember, these are open to the public, but it's ticketed. You do have to, I don't think you're paying for them, but you do have to secure them one way or another. Maybe there's some kind of payment. I know initially last year, was it last year they started the ticketing? I'm pretty sure. I don't think it costs money. I don't know if it does now. But my point being, so if you were, making the trip to Denver or in Denver, you can't just like swing down there anymore. You have to make sure you have a ticket for what it's worth. But Zach, tomorrow, we'll start getting a lot more of a view of things, is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the padded practices and for that matter to see Estimé. If that guy is built like a freaking tank, Chad, he's going to be a pretty difficult running back to tackle for opposing defenses. And again, in conjunction with the speedier guys like Blake Watson, Jaleel McLaughlin, the 1, 2, 3, 4 punch the Broncos have in the backfield. I'm just really excited to see how that all plays out. So
check this out. This is what Payton said today. He said, hey, coach, do you have because it's noteworthy that Estimé is back, right? Because, as we've seen over the years, sometimes a player, suddenly a rookie or a veteran, but in this case, a rookie, gets disappears from OTAs. You go, hey, coach, where's he at? Oh, he ended up going under the knife. A little procedure. He'll be back for training camp. Let not your heart be troubled. And then, Riley Moss, for example, we're not seeing him. Next thing you know, he basically has to redshirt 3/4 of his rookie year. So it was noteworthy that Estimé is back, as promised, for what it's worth, by Sean Payton. So he was asked today, do you have a vision for Estimé to be involved in the passing game? His answer, quote, the vision was pretty clear for, picking him. He was a guy, when we did all the studies on him, we took 15-yard runs or more. He was first in his class. Minus runs, meaning a handoff that you get tackled for a loss. Minus runs. Sometimes running backs have plays where they don't pick up yards. First in his class, meaning minimum. Like he had the fewest number of those. Really good vision in the hole. Rarely did you see a player lose yards. He had good feet for someone who is 220 pounds. So I saw a runner first and value on where we took him. He was one of those guys that I really ... When the draft starts, every once in a while, there's a player that you could say, hey, man, when this thing's all over with, I'd love to have this player. Fortunately, Zach, we were able to get this player, close quote.
Yeah, I'm not saying obviously Sean Payton's evaluation means more than mine, but when I watched Estimé's film, I saw someone that could catch the ball if you throw it to him, but it shouldn't be a central part of your vision for Estimé. As Sean Payton mentioned, his height and his weight, inside runner, hit the hole. He's an early down bruiser, and you take him off the field on passing downs, bring in McLaughlin or Watson and go to work.
I mean, he did say on Estimé today, we saw potential in him as a receiver. But we couldn't say that was the reason why we were drafting him. Then he kind of compared it to Alvin Kamara, the Saints running back. We had a receiver vision until he ran the ball 52 yards on a single carry at Arizona. And then very quickly we had a runner vision too. So I think with Audric, we'll see how that expands. He's smart, he's tough, and I like his size. So they're seeing it, but they're just keeping it simple to start with, sounds like.
Yeah, and it's smart, especially with him coming off the knee injury. And you have so many other running backs in that backfield, Chad, competing for spots. I mean, let it play out organically.
Shouts to Nick Hale. What's up, big dog? Chad and Zach, sounds like Greg Dulcich is back in action and looking good. I'm hoping he can stay healthy because he's good. He'd be good. A huge weapon in Sean Payton's offense. Much love, MHH for life, BTG. Yes, sir. By the way, Bridge the Gap is going to be Nick Hale in Utah Saturday night for a festival in Orem. Check it out, guys. Go see. We're going to be back in Utah. Check it out. It's fun. It's the last thing I'm going to be doing this summer with the band because now things get serious with my job. So go check it out. But Nick, hope to see you there, big dog. Zach Dulcich, bro. Not only is he out there and involved, but he's looking good, dude. You had an article for us with a little clip. What are some of your thoughts on Dulcich?
This is kind of how low the bar is, though. It was just him going through a simple pass catching drill and surviving it, Chad, and we're celebrating that. He didn't get injured. He's healthy. He lives to fight another day. He looks good. That's been the case with Dulcich. He's a weapon when he's on the field, but you can't help the team when you're not on the field. Hopefully he stays healthy. I'll go ahead and knock wood for him right now because he would be that down-the-seam weapon, that safety blanket for Bo Nix that he sorely needs in that tight end room.
So we got Dean W. Johnson jumping in with some stars, some big boy stars on Facebook. So Dean, I know we've seen you in the chat a few times, but as a relatively newer name, thank you for throwing down some support, some stars for us on Facebook. If you got any questions, topics in particular you'd like us to get to, just put it in the chat and we'll keep an eye out for that. So thank you, Dean. Appreciate you, big dog. Zach, I want to shift gears back to something Mike was talking about here earlier. Let me find it. He's talking about how Bo Nix was, Bo Nix ran mostly with the ones today, and they're still rotating him for what it's worth. And Mike was talking about how he was up and down, and then there was a missed deep throw. Of course, the negative things are always going to get more focused on than the positive, but a missed deep throw to Troy Franklin. What do you say to that?
I say it's the second day of the acclimation ramp up training camp practice. And not to anything against you, Michael. I know you're just reporting what was been out there, but I'm not overreacting. I'm not underreacting. He didn't do anything disastrous, Chad, and that's all I really care about, because that would mean he loses ground in the quarterback battle. Then again, Jarrett Stidham so far hasn't done anything overly great or overly bad to lose ground in the quarterback battle. It's pretty much even from where it was a week ago.
It is interesting, though, that, I mean, we had a reason to believe that Stidham would continue to get the first bite of the apple when training camp opened. But it is interesting, Zach, that Bo Nix is the next guy. So, like, is that because he's genuinely earned it? I would say so, but I think it's also weighted a little bit by the expectations the Broncos have for Bo Nix.
And the draft pick.
And exactly, the draft pedigree. And it, I think, is even more because, he was asked today, I want to say by Andrew Mason, Coach Payton was, hey, in what ways do you see Zach Wilson's 33 NFL starts manifest out here in training camp? Which, that's an interesting way to pose the question, because it really puts the coach on the spot. And Sean Payton, for what it's worth, he kind of ducked the question. He said that's more for like preseason games, like being able to specifically answer that, how that experience shows up on the field. But it's noteworthy that he is still the third guy that gets that opportunity. It's Bo Nix. And I'm still telling you that Jarrett Stidham can't just be a little bit better than Bo Nix. Like,
right.
If he's going to be the starter, he's got to be, it's got to be a pretty significant gap between the two.
I'm laughing because do you see the problem here, Chad? We have to hope that Zach Wilson can manifest something in training camp, a miracle, to prove he's not a bust and to be the Broncos' backup quarterback. Michael Ronquillo said it right there. Zach Wilson doesn't need to be here. I'm happy more coming around to that sentiment. It's a waste of time, waste of energy, and the sooner they decide on their top two quarterbacks, meaning Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham, the better off they'll be.
I mean, a lot of people see the Broncos, Zach, only carrying two. Eric Trickle's pre-camp 53-man roster projection, for example, only had two, Stidham and Bo Nix, for what it's worth. It will be interesting to see if that's kind of how it shakes out in the final analysis, though, because there is a financial incentive for Zach Wilson to be the backup. So basically, unless Jarrett Stidham, so there's two caveats, two qualifiers. Unless Jarrett Stidham just like handily, convincingly wins the starting job, like makes it not even an issue, or if maybe Zach Wilson just utterly sucks all summer, like he's just unsalvageable, they can't even begin to repair his confidence, it's just goodbye, then it does make a lot of sense to run with Zach Wilson as your number two, because he's basically half as expensive this year, and both of them are in a contract year. For what it's worth, the two vets.
Yeah, maybe he's not considering it, Chad, but I'll ask you a question. Do you think Sean Payton cares about his reputation as a quarterback whisperer?
I think he cares about it, but it's not something that's necessarily governing his front of brain. Like, I'm making this decision because my reputation is at stake type thing.
Well, he did admit he had two middle fingers he used quite often last season, so obviously it gets to him to some extent. And my point in asking that was, if you're one snap away, regardless of who's the starter, Bo Nix or Jarrett Stidham, you're one snap away from Zach Wilson being your backup in that case. So you're one snap away from the Zach Wilson experiment. What happens if Zach Wilson goes on to do Zach Wilson things and just implodes under Sean Payton? What does that say about Payton? What does that say about the investment? What does that say about the draft pick they gave up? What does that say about the way they arranged their roster? There are many more questions than answers with him, and there's much more uncertainty than if you had a Stidham, more of a safety blanket, a higher floor guy as the backup behind Bo Nix.
Which I get, a little bit, to use Sean Payton's verbiage, a little bit more of a calming presence, right? The Jarrett Stidham, but you sacrifice explosivity and the potential for just big plays with Stidham. Like, honestly, you do. That's just the bottom line. Now, Zach Wilson, the flip side to that coin is he's just wildly inconsistent, unfortunately. But Phil, he's bringing it back to a different subject. He says, guys, now that Sutton is taken care of, will there be any other contracts handled before the season starts? Which, by the way, it's not, he didn't get an extension. They added some escalators to his contract that gives him the opportunity to make more money. But as a guy that was entering, he's got 2 years left on his deal, and he was complaining about his contract. And what the Broncos, concessions they made to Sutton's camp exposes, in my opinion, that they were like, dude, you're under contract 2 more years. Go play on your contract. It was a little bit, they gave him a little something he could work for, but it wasn't a new contract for what it's worth. It's like John Elway, Zach, whatever that was, I want to say 2019, just like gave Chris Harris Jr.'s $3 million in an offseason in a contract year, hoping to ameliorate his feelings and so that he could get him re-signed and extended with, middle season. He did offer him, ended up backfiring on Chris Harris and John Elway for, I guess, in the final analysis. But in Sutton's case, he did not get a new contract, just so you guys know. He just got a few little escalators, incentives added in. But on the heels of Zach, Quinn Minor's getting a big fat payday. We've got some notable guys in a contract year, a couple of whom we've already talked about tonight. But let's just start with Javonte Williams is a candidate. Garrett Bowles is a candidate. He wants to know if there's any other contracts that might be handled before the season starts.
Yeah, I mean, the 500-pound elephant in the discussion here, Patrick Surtain II, Broncos' best player, cornerstone player, multi-time Pro Bowler. I even wrote a story about that yesterday for the site, Chad, and Sean Payton was asked about a potential extension for Surtain. He's under contract for this season, and the Broncos picked up his 5th-year option for 2025. Sean Payton said they would like to get it done, but we will keep you posted. That is one of those answers of we will get to it when we want to. So it doesn't sound like anything's overly imminent, but just like with Miners, Chad, the sooner they extend Surtain, the better, because his price tag is only going to keep going up and up and up, especially for a cornerback. I'll give you one example. On Tuesday, the Jags corner Tyson Campbell, who is nowhere near, PS2's territory. He got a 4-year deal, $76.5 million, $53.4 million in guarantees. He's the highest paid non-Pro Bowl cornerback in NFL history. So if people like Tyson Campbell are fetching those kind of numbers, Patrick Surtain is in for a boatload of money. But if they wait to pay him a year from now, it's going to cost them a lot more. So get that done if they can.
And they do have, if memory serves, we could pull it up, but I know for sure they were top 15 in projected cap space for 2025, and that is still after the dead money of the Russ thing, right? The $85 million, all that. So it might be that they go, let's kick that can down the road, but that is the risk, Zach, is that by each day that they wait on Surtain, price probably goes up. And I agree here with Scott because he says in our private chat, I bet there was a little bit more money on the Sutton thing. I bet there's a little bit more guaranteed money in these concessions, because that's really, I think, Zach, what he wanted. What he was concerned about is $13 million salary. That when he signed it in 2021, it was slightly team friendly, but it was mostly market value for an ex wide receiver one. You fast forward a couple of years, of course, it's not on the same level as the wide receiver ones, what they're banking right now. That's just the nature of the NFL. It's wild, but he only had $2 million of that $13 million fully guaranteed. So that would have been, I would think, Zach, the best way to get him to come back to the table. If you were so, Sean Payton, excited about getting Sutton back and you value what he brings to the table as much as you make it sound like, then why wouldn't you just give him a little bit more in the salary cap or in the guaranteed side of things? Pardon me.
What I think is that Sutton saw the ridiculous money that receivers were getting around the NFL and realized that he's not going to get that with the Broncos. And because he's under contract for 2 more years, he can't get that from another NFL team. So he did and used the only leverage that was in his manual, Chad, which was hold out a voluntary practice and squeeze a little more guaranteed money out of the Broncos. No big deal. You took care of a homegrown guy. You made him happier, not disgruntled, and hopefully he plays better. One more thing with Surtain, though, Chad, that would make sense. I lost my train of thought.
It'll come back to you. Surtain. But remember, he's got the 5th year. He's got a big fat
what was I going to say?
Raise coming next year too. He's under contract. This is not a contract year for what it's worth.
I'm sorry about that. The thing is, it would make sense to pay him now because he's arguably coming off the worst season of his career, Chad. being a PFF ranking wise and grading. He wasn't the same PS2 we saw. So if he has a rebound year, which we think he'll have, if you wait, it's going to make him more expensive by default. So this is the time. This is the time. The market value for Patrick Surtain says pay him now.
Even Sean Payton kind of acknowledged, passively, subtly, he would have liked to have seen more from PS2 last year. Only in this sense. He didn't say that verbatim. I'll paraphrase him. What would you like to see him do more, do better, or what would, what he did mention, I want to say it was Tuesday, Zach, that he'd like to see more ball production.
Yep.
He wants to see my dog come away with an interception or 2 or 3 or 4 more than what he did last year, which was 1, I want to say off the top of my head.
He also said, he mentioned leadership and being more vocal. And he said, I know it's his personality, and he kind of excused it, but I think deep down, Sean Payton does want him to become more of a vocal leader. And if they pay him as such, Chad, as one of the top cornerbacks in the league, he's going to have to be more of a vocal leader and take over that mantle from Justin Simmons.
Indeed. Scott's predicting 5 years, $125 million, 80 million guaranteed for Surtain next spring. And I'll concur here with Keith. Good to see you, Brugman, on Facebook. It'd make more sense to extend Bowles, in my opinion, before the season starts. I don't think you need to do it before the season. We're sharing a brain mostly, though, Keith. I think you get through a quarter of the season, see how he's looking. If he's looking on a level, then go ahead and try and get him extended for like 2 more years, because he is 31. So you got to start wondering about father time, even though he got a late start in his football playing career, and he was drafted as an older rookie. And so there are some relativisms, but I agree with that, Zach. And I know that's the Bulls issue has traditionally never been a topic you and I agree on perfectly.
There's a few degrees of separation for sure. And I feel like if you want to pay him after the season. If you pay him during the year, Chad, number one, I worry, what if he gets hurt in the second half of the year? What if he falls off for some reason? What if his want to goes down, his drive goes down because he got paid? And you mentioned his age. He's only getting older. I don't know. I feel like you're either in or out on Garrett Bowles. You let him go through the year without a deal, or sign him to a little Band-Aid deal before the season starts.
The problem is competent left tackles, period, just are hard to find in the league, let alone guys that can, have the experience he has. Like, he'll go out there, like if he's a free agent in March, let's say he gets through the season healthy and the Broncos don't re-sign him, you guys are going to be stunned at the money that dude's going to make. It'll be like a 2 or 3 year deal somewhere, and you'll be like, really, Garrett Bowles? Just because, not so much that he's that great, Zach, it's just that's value of left tackle in the NFL. But let's shift gears here to Mike Edel. Good to see you, big dog. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate you. He says, what if PS2 plays like he did last year? What kind of contract do you give him then? Go Broncos, go MHH. What do you think, Zach?
That's my kind of the point I was making. He's at his lowest, in quotes, value-wise right now, because he took a little bit of a hit in his play last season. Just think, if you're going to do it now. It's going to be a transitional year. You're eating a lot of dead money. I mean, you can always squeeze out more if you want to pay a player, even a monster deal like PS2. But to answer your question, Mike, obviously, if he goes back to an all-pro level, turns the ball over more like Sean Payton wants, he's going to get more money. Simple as that. So if you want to pay him and you're pretty sure you're going to pay him, just get it done now, or get it done soon.
And by the way, we're still talking about it's a relative scale, meaning like a 2023 Patrick Surtain year is still a top 15 cornerback in the NFL year. Like, did he have the ball production you'd like to see? No. Did he have too many big plays and yards given up at inopportune times? Not consistently, but at little pockets, right? Like little bunches. And that's kind of the way things happen in pro sports, but especially the NFL, is good things come in bunches. And then oftentimes you get into a slump, bad things can come in bunches. So either way, there was something, who was it? I want to say it was either ESPN or NFL.com. I mean, we aggregated so much news over this offseason, I can't keep it all straight, but it was recent, Zach, and it was the one where it was ESPN polled NFL front office guys, executives, coaches, and scouts for their top 10 players at each position, right? And surprisingly, coming off the year that he had, Surtain was still the top vote getter for number one at cornerback amongst NFL personnel, right? And the overarching takeaway from the guys there were like, hey, they acknowledged it was a somewhat of a step back year for Surtain, Zach, but he's just so ridiculously good. He's so ridiculously gifted. He's long. He's strong. He's dedicated. His preparation, like there's just so much talent. He's a force to be reckoned with. Nobody's hedging on him regressing even further. But if 23, Zach, is like the status were to be, and I don't think this is happening, but if 23 were to be the Patrick Surtain status quo from here on out, you still have a top 15 corner in the league.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good point. Even in PS2's, again, worst season, he was still a Pro Bowler and still arguably the best corner in the NFL. And I don't know. I mean, I just feel like you should reward that. The Broncos haven't had the best player at an overall position, Chad, since Von Miller or Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
So you got to take care of those guys. And you dipped your pinky in the water with Quinn Miners. If you can pony up the money, pun intended, get PS2 done.
We got Todd Ostendorf jumping in. What's up, buddy? Thank you for the super. He says, how would you rate the quarterback performances so far? Well, 2 days into camp, a couple of practices in, I would say status quo as expected. You start getting into the dog days, right? Because there's a rhythm to life. There's a rhythm to professional life, whether it's a desk job or playing football, playing quarterback. You start getting into a rhythm. And it's a little bit of a level playing, levels the playing field a little bit for the guys that if they have that extra talent, they got that something that separates them from the average guy in the office. Let's say that consistency and the rhythm. Pretty soon, you're going to start seeing him. It could be a salesman selling cars. If he's showing up every day, pretty soon you're going to see that separation and that rise. So for me, Zach, it's pretty much what I would expect to have seen and heard. Ask me in 2 weeks, and I think we'll actually have a lot better of a kind of compass on which way it's really going to point to.
Yeah, I would rate it incomplete for sure. I was going to say, ask me again, even Monday, but that's still too
on
early.
A 1 to 10 scale, he added underneath this super.
It's I don't know, 7. There's been nothing overly bad, but nothing overly amazing. It's just incomplete right now, and they have to go through the preseason, and even then we might not know, Chad. This is going to be a growing period, especially if Bo Nix gets the number 1 job, which I hope he does sooner rather than later. We might not know who the real Bo Nix is until the end of the season.
Honestly, okay, so if what you're saying here, Todd, is 10, you're asking us to rate the performances. I can't really use a Pro Bowl ready because it's still not football. You see what I'm saying? Like it's they don't have pads on. They're going at full speed, but like a player comes up on Bo Nix could be getting sacked in a game, but it's not a sack in the rep because they can't touch the quarterback. Those kind of things. Ask us this even like halfway through next week, because then there'll have been a couple of days of padded practices. But I'll tell you 5. And I only say that because it's no better or worse than what I expected 2 days in so far. Like it's basically status quo so far, which is what I expected.
I guess I bumped up my rating because of Sean Payton's one comment, Chad. He said there's a calming effect to watching all the quarterbacks, like you mentioned earlier. So it's about down the middle, but maybe like a 6 or so, maybe just slightly above average. But again, 2 days in, it's incomplete.
Phil, I think with better D-line play, PS2 will have a great year. That's another great point here. Scott, would you be kind enough? I could pull it up, but mid-thought, I'll get all screwed up. Could you pull up where the Broncos ranked in team sacks last year, just as a team? Sacks that not given up, but sacks total. Because that is a hand-in-glove thing. Everyone raves. We have all these glory day memories of the no-fly zone. And there were some hitters, right? You had Talib, you had Harris Jr., Roby in his early prime, you had TJ Ward, you had Darian Stewart. I mean, that was a legit core of 5 guys. But give me a break, dude. Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware. I mean, you had Malik Jackson, Derek Wolfe, even Sly Williams, dude. Sylvester Williams, that spin move, he'd pull it out of his pocket, Zach, like 3 times a year. And when he would, sack, and I get you kind of have to do that as a pass rusher. If you have your one signature move, if you're using it all the time, it becomes telegraphed and they just don't figure out how to stonewall it. But could you have used it a little more often than that? Slide would have been great. But my point being here, I agree with Phil. A more consistent D-line presence and edge pressure on the quarterback. We tied for 21st in the NFL last year in sacks. That was your Denver Broncos. So if you can bump that, Zach, if you can even be within spitting distance of the top 10, that will have an enormously cascading positive effect on the secondary.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Phil, but I want to kind of hash it out further a little bit. The D-line overall will help the edge play, like Chad talked about, and the edge play, getting more pressure on the quarterback, will help the secondary and PS2 included. So that's for sure. The only thing I worry about, though, Chad, D-line play regardless, is the cornerback opposite PS2. If corners don't throw to PS2, is Damari Mathis up for the job? What's going on with Riley Moss? Is it going to be Levi Wallace? I want that cornerback 2 job to be solidified. Then I'll really feel good about the pass defense and Surtain.
You know what's wild? Just real quick before I grab this. So, and just hang tight with me for a second here, Eric. Scott brings up too in our private chat here that the Broncos tied with the Falcons at 21st, right? 42 team sacks. So in 2023, 42 team sacks, Zach, you're like edging into the bottom third of the NFL, right? The Denver Broncos, the Super Bowl 50 team that everybody lionizes for good reason, they finished number 1 in the NFL under Wade Phillips that year in sacks, 52. A team with 42 sacks that year would have been exactly in the top 10. They would have been 10. That was the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's crazy how, whatever it is, 8 years down the road, how quickly it's like it. I mean, last year, for what it's worth, the team number 1, I'll pull it up here in a second, but let's grab Eric. Evening Priest, Scott and MHH Posse. Any word on how Brandon Jones and our revamped D-line are playing? What have you heard, Zach?
Again, really too soon to tell, Eric. The D-line will be a little more standout when pads go on and they do goal line drills and stuff like that and start to hit. But with Brandon Jones, I really liked this signing when they made it. We talked about it on the podcast. He can do most things that Simmons could as well. Doesn't get the same credit, doesn't have the same name cachet. But one comment that Jones made to the media when he was given availability, I believe it was yesterday, Chad, was his comfortability in Denver's defense, his freedom of what he can do in the back end. He praised VJ and the coaches and Jim Leonard for that. He said he didn't have that with the Dolphins, and it kind of reinvigorated him to be here and be a better player. So I am excited about that signing, but we'll have more of a clearer picture of Jones and the D-line when preseason starts to get underway.
By the way, Ravens, 60 sacks. That was the NFL leader last year. And as Scott opines in our private chat, QBs are coached nowadays to take the sack instead of throwing it. So kind of the Peyton Manning thing, like when Peyton Manning was got, he just said, you got me. And he would just go down, right? Like he'd either sack himself or just kind of like, okay, I'm going down. You know what I mean? Like, and that there is some truth to that. Like it used to be no way, no how am I going down? And like, you'd really have to fight to get to that. Not to say that you don't now, but there is a slight difference there. Eric Young, 2 Erics in a row. What's up, bro? This guy on YouTube, 1 on Facebook. This guy, Eric Young, on YouTube. Great to have you. Thank you for the super big dog. Says, so stoked. Training camp is here. I am ready for some Bronco football. Yeah, baby. All the time, you know, the wait is over. I mean, yeah, we're still waiting for the actual regular season. But, guys, this is manna from the football gods. Like, we were dying for 6 weeks wandering the football desert. We're just going, give us something. Give us anything relative to, like, current events to sink our teeth into. Now you got it. Like, it's still a shell, Zach, of what it's going to be. But, like, hearing from Coach Payton and some players this week and seeing a few things. I mean, even being able to say, oh, Greg Dulcich is back on the field playing, practicing, Audric Estimé. This is like, I'm not taking it for granted.
I'm not either. And, you know, the season's right around the corner. You mentioned the Ravens a minute ago and, you know, Bronco football. The former Ravens defensive coordinator, he was great in getting them the sacks. He's now the Seahawks head coach, and the Broncos face the Seahawks in week 1. So it's going to be a really interesting test off the bat. I know we were talking about the defense, but for the offensive line to guard against the sacks and protect whoever's starting at quarterback, Chad.
Yeah, I got to grab this from Patrick McCracken. He's cracking off here with a interesting topic, just for what it's worth. Says, and this is in response to something the Ronk said earlier. Simon Fletcher was better than Elvis Dumervil, but Dumervil's hit on Tom Brady was an instant classic. I'll never forget that hit. And it reminds me, in fact, of so the year Peyton Manning came to Denver. So 2012, someone out there, the last time I searched for this on YouTube, I wasn't able to find it, but it might be findable. You might be able to search and find it actually on the MHH Facebook, going way back to like almost 10 years. Well, over 10 years, I guess. But Zach, there was so the Dark Knight Rises trailer. Someone took the audio from the Dark Knight Rises trailer and they put it a bunch of Broncos images over that trailer, right? So it was like everything you heard in the Dark Knight Rises trailer. You're seeing like Dumervil, you're seeing Vaughn, and then the last thing is like Peyton Manning. Unfortunately, at that time it was the only thing available in a Colts uniform, coming down the tunnel from behind him, coming out the tunnel into Mile High Stadium. And it was just so dope. But in that video, the way that they postured the scene of that hit that you're talking about, Patrick, of Dumervil's hit on Tom Brady, it was so dope. But a lot of these things, they end up getting copyright claimed and then scrubbed from the internet. So I wish there was a way to like find it for sure, because I'd turn it on right now and watch it with you guys. It was that dope.
Yeah, sounds pretty epic. And I agree, Patrick, that hit will go down in history. You cannot watch an anti-Tom Brady montage without seeing that hit. And it makes me tingly in all the right places, Chad, every time I see it.
I'm going to see if I can find it, but I'm not getting my hopes up. Last time I looked, no dice. But guys, we're about out of time. We got to, so any burning topics, questions, supers, get them in the chat. While you do that, we got a few messages for you before we dip on out of here.
Another tremendous episode, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at the MHH Pod. You can follow us on Twitter or X at Mile High Huddle. You can follow Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like you see us rocking each and every podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't done so yet, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can also find us and connect with us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your Football Priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please, please, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Man, I just did a cursory search and still no luck on the YouTube. So I think it got scrubbed, unfortunately. Mike, we love you. Thank you, big dog. Says, great show tonight, Chad and Zach on the MHH podcast. Go Broncos. Thank you, brother. It's so good to see everybody tonight. There was a shout right here. Hey, Big Earn, what's up? So good to see you. Broncos country only. You know, that's a hashtag in and of itself. Thanks, you guys. So Zach and I, we are off till Sunday. I will be getting home Sunday in time for the show, so I'm looking forward to that. But if you were in Utah, northern Utah, I guess, come to the Bridge the Gap show in Orem Saturday night. It's going to be a gas. I'll see you guys there. But until then, if I miss you there, Sunday, it's going to be dope. Zach can't wait, because the next day we get, obviously, the first padded practice. So we'll also be on Monday night. We'll get to review what happened on Monday. But tomorrow is when things really kind of start getting amped with training camp. So by the time we see you guys Sunday, there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Yes, sir. Cannot wait. Have a great start to your weekend. We'll see you Sunday. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.